Hey guys, it's Emmy from Iron Pine Homestead, and I'm going to show you how to sew on one of these little towel straps using a scrap towel and your regular towel. So please remember that I am also a beginner, so these are just some things that I have learned along the way. If you wanted to, you realistically could just use this edging because it's already been sewn for you. You could just clean it up and then sew that to your bath mat. That would be a way shorter video and a lot easier. However, on mine, I would kind of like mine to be just a little bit thicker. So I'm going to make a cut down the middle just to make this a little more manageable for myself. And then I'm going to measure out roughly 2 inches. On my mat, that's 2 squares, but you could make this anywhere between like 2 and 4 inches, but the bigger you go is going to be the wider that your strap is going to be. So I wouldn't go more than honestly even 3 inches. That would probably be too big. But I'm just going to measure out here using my squares the 2 inches, and I'm going to cut there. And I learned this really nifty trick that if you just make a slit in the fabric and then you pull the fabric pieces apart, it will give you a rough edging that is actually pretty straight. I would just make sure to give yourself a little bit of leeway in the event that it doesn't come out 100% straight, but for us and for this project, since we're all just beginners here, we're actually going to be folding this in so that edge does not have to be perfect regardless. So now we're going to take it and we're just going to fold it into tri-folds. That way we can get an idea of how thick this really is going to be, and you could adjust the fold to make it bigger or smaller. The only thing you want to keep in mind though is that you are going to sew down the middle, so you don't want it to be too big. And then you're going to come around with your iron and just iron those edges. I find it just makes it easier on these kind of projects if I just iron it. You can use pins. However, for me, I don't always like to use pins unless like I have a really long run, but since this is going to be so short, I would honestly rather just iron it. And then that way it keeps it so that that middle fold stays nice and crisp, and then it's easier for me to run my seam down the middle. Once we get done with the iron, we're going to measure out roughly how long we actually want the strap to be. For me, I was thinking about 5 to 6 inches, but that's going to be entirely up to you. The one thing you want to make sure is that it can bend without pulling too tight on your new strap or without pulling too tight on your towel. So I'm going to just roughly measure out an inch on each side to be able to simulate where I'm going to sew the strap to my towel. And then I'm going to bend it just to see kind of how that curve works and if that's a good enough bend for me, which it looked fine to me. So then after I get it laid back out, I'm going to go ahead and make my cut. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and move over to the sewing machine to get the last couple of sews in. For my machine, I do have a Viking. It is the Husqvarna and it is the Design G35. I absolutely love this machine, and I just have to give a shout out to my grandmother, who I am very thankful for, because when she upgraded her own machine, she went ahead and just gave me hers. So this does more than just sewing, this also does embroidery. So it might be a little much for somebody if you're looking for a machine. I wouldn't necessarily go this big if you're just looking for sewing. But I do have to say that I do love the Viking brand in general. So we're just going to go ahead and thread the needles around. This sometimes can be a little tricky for me because I have longer nails, but we get the job done. And now comes the fun part. This is where we're going to do just a single stitch down the middle. That's why we wanted to have it overlapping so that way it would hold it together. I'm going to leave just a little bit of room at either end. That way I know where I'm sewing it to my towel, but you can do a stitch straight through. Either way is fine. It's your choice, really. Then when you're done, you're going to pull it off, and you can either use a pair of scissors like I do, or on my machine I have an attachment that allows me to cut, but I don't really use that. This is kind of what it should look like. You'll just want to clip off those little edges, but that is where I said that I stopped at the end so that I knew where I was going to stitch it to my towel. Again, if you went all the way through, it's not a big deal. Just clip off those little excess pieces and then we're going to line it up with our towel. Again, this is all about preference, so where you want to put it is fine with you. And once you get it correct on where you want it, you're going to just go ahead and get it hooked up to your machine. Again, I'm not changing my stitching. I'm gonna just go through with a single stitch. The only additional thing I'm going to do is that once I get towards that end, instead of pulling it off right away, I'm gonna hit the back seam button where it reverses my stitches, and then I'm gonna just go back over it. If you don't have this option, you could always just take it off and then just go back over it. I like to do it that way. I make sure that it's on there nice and snug. I'm sure you could use a different type of stitching, but for us beginners, we're gonna just keep going with this single stitch. I'm gonna give it a tug just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And then look, there's my seam. I did use a darker thread, that way I could see where I'm going with my stitching, but also because I just don't mind if it's in a different color. For me, it's not really that big of a deal who's really inspecting my towels. I mean, if you do, that's fine, but you can always change your color of thread if you wanted it to be more matching or hidden. But again, I just used mine so that way I could actually see it. Once you have that side and it's all nice and trimmed, you're gonna just fold it over and kind of gauge how you want it. And when you get it again at that length and in that area that you want, you're gonna just throw it right back on that machine. And once again, we're gonna just use that single stitch. Later on, if you wanted to experiment, you could with different stitches. But once you're done, you're just gonna go ahead and do that back stitch again. That way it just keeps it on there nice and snug, or you're going to take it off and just do another single stitch. Once that's done, you'll just pull it off, get it all nice and clipped up. And here's the final product. I hung it up next to my boyfriend's towel so you could see the difference between one with a hook and one without. We appreciate you watching, and if you've learned anything today, we hope you'll consider liking this video and hitting the subscribe to follow more on our journey. Thank you for following us here at Iron Pine Homestead.